just do it for Miami Dolphins. The pressure, he's in trouble. Loses the football. Touchdown! Miami. You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle. It's a Dolphin touchdown. Throwing deep upfield on the near side. Man open. Touchdown. Looking deep. He's got a man. Touchdown. The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown. He's going deep. He's got it over the touchdown. Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one as we dive Fin Too Deep. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Neal Driscoll. Neal, we are 5 days away from the veterans reporting. The rookies have already reported. We'll get into the injury news that came out today in a little bit. But on day one of reporting, we already got some injury news with Ethan Bonner. He's going to be missing, a few days due to illness. And Zeke Vandenberg, a UDFA, a lot of us were interested to see a guy who won the Buck Buchanan Award, a guy a lot of us were interested to see perform this offseason. Well, he's out for the whole year. He sustained an injury while training. So how are you feeling, bro? Only 5 days away. I mean, it's getting closer. It's closer. 5 days till the vets report, Neal. 10 days until fans can go to the first open practice. So once the vets report, Neal, it'll catch up on you real quickly how fast it'll be here and fans will be at practice.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting close. I mean, that's what's exciting. We're getting close to real football. It's a long wait, right? After the season ends and you get through the draft cycle, that timeline for training camp, it's a long way away, but excited for the Dolphins to kind of be coming back, right? Like, this is kind of what, for me as a sports fan, that is one of my favorite times of the year. Just, camp battles. What's the team look like heading into the season? Who's going to be the guy that comes under the radar? Who's going to be that surprise cut? All those fun stories. Because I think what you and I can agree on here is this is going to be the most complete 53-man roster. I mean, we've seen in probably 20 years as Dolphin fans, man. This team from top to bottom, from 1 to 53, there's going to be a lot of talent. So, you're going to see, I guess, fingers crossed, pajamas inside out and all that good stuff, that the injury bug is nice to us this offseason, because they're not fun when you get a big injury or something during training camp. But, hey, man, this is as close as we're going to be. I can't wait for the veterans to report. This team every day out there with this leadership, these players and these coaches, it's going to be a battle every day out there. It's going to be competitive. Like, this team's hungry. We were just talking about the swagger they have. Like, they're like, when the offense is playing the defense, in those 11-11 sessions in the summer, it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, even the one-on-ones that are obviously in favor of the receiver, those are going to be battles when you get the top guys going up. Like, and I can't wait. Honestly, I can't wait to see how. I can't wait to see how Cam Smith and Devon Achane perform. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing the rookies in action and even some of the UDFAs, man. I mean, it's funny we talk about how stacked this will be of a roster, all fit from 1 to 53, but I truly believe from 51 to 53, you're going to have a battle for some spots there, and you might have some people. Did all of us expect Tanner Connor to make the final 53 last year when everything started? So
Right.
It's going to be interesting. There's always some surprises, so can't wait to see everything unfold, man. It's going to be exciting time, bro.
Well,
Exciting.
that and like typically, you don't see our practice squad getting poached too much, but I think we're gonna have talent and they're gonna have to make tough decisions on, how do we maneuver to protect players that we still like, right? Like a lot of the undrafted free agents that are on this team, like people are gonna have their eyes on the Miami Dolphins, right? Like one name that that comes to mind for me is I don't see any way Braylon Sanders can make this team with the roster the way it is at receiver. And the Dolphins like him, right? They like him more than I do. But, if a guy like that finds his way on
It's
the
going to be hard for River Craycraft, and we know how
yeah,
much they like him, right?
yeah, right. Like I don't see a path for River to make the team. And
Unless they get
that's
rid of
crazy.
Cedric.
Yeah, unless they get rid of Cedric. Yep.
Yeah,
And we
that's
might talk about that soon.
That's the key one. Hey, I just gave you one, for River. You can go down the river with your prediction, bro.
Yeah, there's a good segue.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. So let's start off everything because we got a bunch of stuff to go over today. We got a jam-packed show for everyone here.
That's good.
So let's start off with let's just do some housekeeping here for everyone. Because they might not have seen it yet. Neal, of course, what I'm talking about, and people are gonna panic, so we're gonna have to stop the panic. That's the first thing we're gonna have to do when we bring this up here. But Nick Needham, he's placed on the active, physically unable to perform list, not even an hour ago, Neal. And why people not need to panic, Neal, is because this means they can activate him at any time. And should we all be surprised that he didn't make it? Because, Neal, I think there's positives to take away from this tweet. Call me crazy. And then you're going to say, hey, Reason, you're crazy. And I'm going to say, am I? Because I don't see Trill Williams and Brandon Jones' name up there as well. And they should have been right along with him being activated put on the pup list. And that shows us that Trill and Brandon Jones might be ready to go day one of training camp, Neal. And why is that so important? Because, I don't think we put it on our position battles. Well, we did with Brandon Jones and Achane. But with Trill in that mix, that backup safety battle is even an interesting one to watch. And Trill is going to be an interesting character to watch because, like I've said, and I will continue to say, when Jalen Ramsey was talking about, he said there's multiple players in that secondary who can run that star role like him. I think he was talking about Cam Smith eventually. And I think Trill Williams is another player who's talking about because we saw the versatility at Syracuse where he's just on the boundary in the slot and single high at Syracuse. And I think another guy who fits that bill is Javon Holland. But Trill Williams fitting that bill, it's a must, Neal, that especially with a new coordinator, that Trill and Brandon hit the ground running day one with Deshaun Elliott involved now, right?
Yeah, look, when I saw the contract that Nick Needham signed for, which was well below market value, it told me two things: that he wanted to be a Dolphin, and that he probably start the season on the pup list, right? Like,
Yeah.
we got him for pennies on the dollar for the type of player he is. The reality is, and I'm a big Nick Needham fan, I always have been, love how he's blossomed here. The reality is, on our roster, he might be the fifth best cornerback. There's Jalen Ramsey, there's Xavier Howard. There's Cater Kohu, there's Cam Smith,
that's who he'll be battling, right? Nick is Cater for that slot spot, and Cater has a one up. Not only was he not hurt last year when Needham was, Cater had a breakout season, Neal.
Right. And I would say that the level Cater played at last year was as good as Nick Needham's ever played here.
I agree.
Like, if we're being honest, I mean, Cater Kohu, from some, statisticians that are ranking the players, had the third best cornerback season last year. Like, and this isn't a crap on Nick Needham. I love Nick Needham. I was so happy when we kept him, and I think having 5 really good corners is a good thing. So I think it's great to bring him along slowly. We don't need Nick Needham weeks 1 through 4. If he's out for the first 4 weeks and he's on the pup, who cares? We need him for the back half of the season. We need him to come back, get healthy, and be, that nickel dime corner. But, we're not going to win the Super Bowl in the first 4 weeks of the season, right? We need him for that back stretch. And, look, let's say the Dolphins suffer some type of injury in the secondary, right? During camp or the first couple games. It's going to be a great security blanket to have Nick Needham coming off the pup list. So, I don't take that news as bad at all. It's kind of what I expected. I've seen him working hard. Nick Needham's going to be out on that field, before we know it. It's not. I don't think this is a Byron Jones situation.
No.
I think this is a standard pup. He'll miss 4 weeks, and you'll probably see him back. Week 5, kind of coming along slowly, activated probably by week 6, ready to rock and roll.
I think he's going to come back during camp.
Yeah, good. I hope he does.
Shout out to Knight. He says it's Cater's job anyways. And Miami Breaker 305 makes a bold prediction. He says, check your freaking pulse, Dolphin fans. 1 more week to go. Trill will be the starter. Love that player. Hey, we all loved Trill's upside last year heading into the offseason. We all thought there was a pathway for him to get some serious snaps last year, and that injury took that away. And I'm listen, I think we all want someone named Trill starting for the Dolphins, okay? Let alone a guy who can play at the level Trill has. Big fan of him since coming out of Syracuse when we got him for free, basically, because he didn't pass the physical with the Saints, and he came over here. I thought that was an absolutely under-the-radar steal. So, it's going to be interesting. We're going to go from one of the most depleted secondaries in the league last year to now we just have a plethora of talent. And, we're going to, like Neal said, we're going to have some real hard decisions to make on the chopping board, right?
I mean, do you even think Verone McKinley's a lock to make the roster? And I like Verone McKinley.
No, but I'm a big fan of Verone.
Yeah, it's going to be like a battle royal.
Yeah,
for those depth spots on that secondary.
Oh, yeah.
Our practice squad's going to have starting quality players. We haven't even mentioned.
That's why you're right. Verone, if Verone doesn't make the team, he's going to get snagged because of the reps he has last year, right? In the league, he's going to get snatched. You're right.
And Elijah Campbell's played some good football for this team, man. He has. He's been a decent contributor out there. And that's a guy there's 12 guys in this secondary that you look at and they're rosterable NFL players or better. In the passing league, and then you have the pass rush to kind of put even more pressure on the quarterbacks with that secondary, man. That's why this defense gets you excited for the jump that's coming.
Okay. Let's get into something, because I pitched this to my graphic guy. Shout out to FinHub on all y'all supporting FinHub. We just passed over 10K over there on FinHub. And I pitched this to EM Dolphin fan privately too. And I'm going to now pitch this live on air to you.
Oh, biting my nails.
All right. So would you hold off on extending Christian Wilkins? And here is the method to my madness. We are already about a month and a half away from the season starting. Now, I had it on my predictions and it's since been taken off that I think they'll get an extension done. So that's where I think will happen. But let me hit you with this. Would you hold off on extending Wilkins and Zach Sieler? And the reason being, what if you got a legit shot at Aaron Donald at the trade deadline and you could bring in Aaron Donald for the rest of this year, but also another season or two on top of that? Because the reason why I'm sitting here is if you're going to be getting into 22.5 million anyways, and I get Aaron Donald's 32, but he's 32 and he's still one of the best players in the league.
One of the best defensive players ever.
But I'm just talking about he's still one of the best players in the league today. So let's not act like he's hitting a wall or anything.
Yes.
And you could probably get him for around that same money. He'd take a little bit less if you could say to him, hey, listen, 2-year deal. You got to, because he clearly wants to run it back for another championship. Because the word out of LA, Neal, is that first of all, Stafford declined to restructure his money, number one. And number two, the word out of LA is if they aren't winning, he's going to potentially be moved at the deadline because he wants to win. So if you can say to him, hey, listen, come here. We got a 2-year window. And, I'm just sitting here thinking about this because he delivers the pass rush our interior has so greatly needed. And you're talking about one of the best players that's ever lived here. And I don't know, man. Am I nuts for thinking this way? Is that a situation? No. Because you can extend Wilkins at any time during the season, even if he has a good season. Okay, you're going to pay a bit more of a premium. But if you monitor that situation and Christian and Aaron Donald is available at the deadline, I mean, you could go acquire Christian, Aaron Donald, keep Wilkins and Sieler for the rest of the year, run that rotation, and then make the decision after the year. who do you want to roll forward with for the next couple of years while this window is open? And, I would say Aaron Donald. I mean, I don't think we're already poaching. We've already poached them for Ramsey.
Right. Well, I would say this for me, when you think about this, and usually I preface this by saying, I love Christian Wilkins, and I did a thing with my top 10 favorite athletes this week, and I had Christian Wilkins 10, right? So I like Christian Wilkins, but you know what? I like the Miami Dolphins more than I like Christian Wilkins. So I'm just going to shoot it straight here. The contract that Quinnen Williams got this week lowered my price tag with Christian Wilkins, where my max, I think, reason right now where I am is about 18 million.
18 million. That's what I've been saying the whole time, Neil.
And let me tell you why. And here's the stat that I wrote down because I wanted to be prepared for this. So
okay.
Wilkins has played 64 games in his career, and he has 11.5 sacks. That means he gets a sack in 18% of his games, right? In 57 games, Quinnen Williams has 27.5 sacks, which means he gets a sack in 48% of his games. So he gets a sack in 30% more of the games that he plays than Christian Wilkins. I don't care because the defensive run, like Quinnen Williams is great against the run too. So is Christian Wilkins, not taken away from him. But when I saw the price tag that Williams got, I think the Jets got a hell of a good deal on Williams. And I think, look, I think Quinnen Williams is a better football player than Christian Wilkins. And that's thinking with my head, not my heart. And he's just a way more impactful football player. He's literally played less games. He gets more sacks. He's equal or as good or better in the run than Christian is over the last 3 years. Like, I love Christian Wilkins, but you pay this guy $24 million, and you are hamstringing this team for the future. Like, you should get a discount. The Jets don't have state tax. I mean, they do have state tax. We don't in Miami, so that could be considered. But I'm with you on the Aaron Donald thing, and I think we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, and I think that's a real possibility. And then the other reason I don't want to lock us in with a Wilkins extension, is look, what's the worst case scenario that can happen to this Dolphins team this year, right? An injury to Tua, right? You would agree that's the worst case? Well, if you pay Christian Wilkins and you lock up his guaranteed money, you have no cap flexibility. You just mentioned Matt Stafford. If the Rams are 2-6, right, around the deadline, and we know that Tua is going to be out, and I'm just saying in a worst case scenario, out for a substantial part of time.
Yeah.
Would you not want to pull the trigger and trade a pick
if he's healthy?
Stafford?
He's healthy.
He'd probably, because I heard before, this is years ago, that if he was leaving Detroit, that he had interest in playing in Miami. Stafford. And this is just a contingency theory, but like if you have Wilkins locked up for guaranteed money, you can't make that. If you say, hey, we need to go get a Matt Stafford, and we might have to move a Christian Wilkins to make it happen. As much as you like a defensive tackle, the quarterback is what drives this league and this team.
You're moving Christian Wilkins for a Super Bowl shot this year. That's
right.
What you're doing. Yeah.
And I would do that. And I think for the Rams that you could probably get Stafford and maybe a second round pick to do so. Back. So like that it kind of seems like a Madden theory, like a Madden, trade deadline theory, but like whenever you watch any video about the Dolphins and people are talking about how they're a Super Bowl contender, they always say if Tua stays healthy. Well, I'm a believer
even
that
Tua said it, Neil. Even
right.
Tua said, right?
Well, like, so I'm not coming out of left field being like, I'm not going to get up here and act like I know whether Tua is going to be healthy or not all season. I don't think Matt Stafford's better than Tua. I'll preface that, but I'll say that I think he gives us a chance to win. So I think that by keeping Wilkins under this deal for this year, and if he plays like he did last year again,
pay it. Yeah.
Pay him or give him the franchise tag. Don't run there. You get no prize in this situation now because Lawrence is signed, Quinnen Williams signed, Jeff Simmons is signed. You're not the early bird anymore. You're not going to get no prize for signing Christian Wilkins at this point, right? Like he's not going to get more money. So I think there's a lot of levels to this Christian Wilkins deal where my scenario right now, the best thing for the Dolphins to do is sit on their hands. Wilkins is playing under the cap, which is a great thing. Good team leader, good player, believes in himself. I love that Wilkins is out there. I don't think there's any rush or reason to get the deal done. If Wilkins wants to sign for $16 to $18 million, sure, get it done. But if he's looking for $20 million or north of that, why force something right now when you limit your options? And I think that Chris Greer's doing really good work by not giving in on that situation and not giving in on the Dalvin Cook situation because no one else is signing Dalvin Cook. You know what I mean? I think Chris Greer is doing really good work by remaining patient. It's the hardest part of any negotiation that you do in sales and life, whatever you do. The hardest part is to sit on your hands and be quiet. But damn, it's effective, man.
Speaking of Dalvin Cook, I'll have an update about him and amongst other things tonight for all of y'all on 3 Takes on the Patreon. So check that out. Yeah, you make a really good point with Matt Stafford. If Wilkins' contract starts affecting contingency plans for that you have in place, if things start going and let's be honest here. Another thing I'd be calling the Rams, and I've said this multiple times on the show, I'd be calling them and seeing, can I get Tyler Higbee for 5th or 6th right now?
Well, I think the Rams are going to be one of the worst teams in football, man. I mean, they're paying the price for going all in and winning the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
And it happens. The fact that Matthew Stafford said, I'm not renegotiating my deal, tells me that he has no faith that they're going to be contenders, right? Because why wouldn't you want to come and bring in something to support you? I think that this is going to be Stafford's last year in Los Angeles, no matter what. I think the reason Aaron Donald and Sean McVay were flirting with retirement because they knew this was coming. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't think they want to go from being the Super Bowl champions to one of the doormats of the league. But the Rams are going to be a bad football team this year. And Steve Avila, we loved him coming out. That's who they drafted with their first draft pick this year. As much as I love him as a left guard, he's not going to change their win-loss total that much. You know what I mean? They lost real impact players. Like, they weren't that great last year, and they lost Jalen Ramsey, right? They lost Leonard Floyd. They've lost quality football players there. The Rams are going to be one of those teams. Like, if they are 2-6, and people will say, well, why would they trade a Matt Stafford? Shit, trading Matt Stafford in that scenario is the reason you go get a Drake May or Caleb Williams. Like, that's how it happens. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You kind of fold halfway through the season, which I think they're going to do. So they'll have teams like Aaron Donald. Like, you're not going to have to give up first-round picks to get these players. It's going to be a fire sale. And if you can strategically fit it into your cap, you might add a Hall of Fame caliber defensive tackle. Aaron Donald's probably a top 25, top 30 player that ever played the game of football.
Agreed. And the he's more versatile along that front than Christian Wilkins is too, right? So
I mean, look, we love the Dolphins. We talk about them all the time. Look, Tyreek Hill, you had Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald would be the best player on the Miami Dolphins right now. I believe that. Like, I think that's how good he still is. Maybe Tyreek could battle him, but like, you're adding that level of player. So, look, are these conspiracy theories and dreams? For now, yes, but like, there's a lot of moving points. And at last year's deadline, if we didn't learn one thing, we should have learned that Chris Grier is willing to make a move because he thinks his team's ready to make the run.
Agreed. Neil, what's going on in the world right now? Devin Achane got his Madden respect and was rated as the fastest running back in Madden next to Raheem Mostert, both at 95. And then today, Jalen Ramsey is a top-rated quarterback in Madden. Now, people might be asking, okay, well, where does Xavier Howard fall in all this? Now, I believe the 20th player on this list is rated 84. And funny enough, if you were to go out and shout out to Houts for putting these up, Xavier Howard is rated 84th overall. So he's tied with the 20th overall cornerback in the game. You see him right there at 84 overall. How quickly they forget what he did for so many years, eh? And how quickly people are so quick to disrespect Xavier Howard, Neil. And it's not just Madden. We see it everywhere. We saw him. He made the honorable mentions on the top 10, cornerback list. Vote by ESPN, voted on executives of the NFL, scouts, and coaches. And it's just, people, I don't know why no one's projecting him higher, because it's like everyone forgot what happened when he had a healthy Byron Jones on the opposite side of him. But now he's got a healthy Jalen Ramsey, who's 100 times the defensive back. I won't just say cornerback, defensive back that Byron ever was. And no one's projecting him to take another one of those massive leaps. Like, Neil, I get it's not fair to sit here and expect another 8 interception season where he should have been defensive, got way more votes than he did for defensive player of the years like a couple of years ago. But is 5 or 6 interceptions really out of the realm of possibility? Is Xavier Howard coming back to a more of a lockdown ball hawk player, and because he doesn't have to travel. And you know what it is, Neil. I mean, we watch it as closely as anyone. When we've been having to watch the traveling with Byron being hurt and such, all of a sudden X has had serious groin issues the last 2 years. Not traveling, because under Byron they stayed right side, left side. Not traveling potentially. That's gonna keep him fresh, Neil, and he might not have those lingering issues, that have bugged him like the groin. And if that happens, Neil, we could see him elevate right back. I'm expecting to see him elevate to that. Where I'm going with this, Neil, is I'm expecting to see him elevate to that elite level again. And I don't know what these people are, how these people don't have the foresight, Neil, to see that after what the hell he did with Byron Jones. And now he's got freaking Jalen Ramsey, Neil.
Dude, for over 30 years of my life, right, my birthday tradition, my birthday is coming up in August, is that one of the gifts I get from my mom is a copy of Madden. This year, for the first time, that tradition is going to be stopped. And I'll get on the Xavier Howard, but I saw the Dolphins had an overall team rating of 75.
I talked to someone because Houta had early access because he has the gaming. He works for a gaming site.
Yeah.
He said that's not true. He
Okay.
said I heard it was 75 or 76, and he said no, it was higher than that.
Okay, because if it is okay,
He
so
said in the beta it was higher than that. He said from what he played, it was higher than that.
Because there is no way that anybody in their right damn mind could rate this team as 75. Like and like I see Chubb had a 79. Which
You're not
I think
buying it though, Neil.
Well, I
am just because it's the most talented roster we've had, bro. I gotta see this, bro.
Well, I'll be honest, man. I wish there was, back in the day when there was like other football games. I wish we still had that.
I agree.
Because Madden needs to be challenged, man. The game, like the best version of the game to me was when Marshall Faulk was on the cover, and that was 21 years ago, right?
Yo, bro. Wasn't that the bro? You are throwing me back. Wasn't that the PlayStation 2 one that came out?
Yeah. Oh, dude.
Like that was
the best.
the first one. The first ones. But yo, Neil, check this out. Tyreek Hill 99, Waddle 98. They're the top two at their position in speed. Okay.
Mostert and
Achane at 95, top two in their position of speed, and Robbie Chosen's a 95, bro.
Right, dude. I mean, that's why when I heard they were 75, but like, look, I saw there was a lot. They didn't penalize Tre'Davious White for being hurt and not playing well.
I know.
They penalized X. It just makes no
sense.
Neil,
Chase Young was rated higher than Jalen Phillips, Neil.
Yeah, honestly, because you know why Madden does is they go off the name recognition more so than the actual. They don't have film on, they just don't. And honestly, I also saw the reverse of this when a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, Sauce Gardner's the fourth quarterback. Are you crazy, dude? Sauce Gardner had a good rookie year, but he had 1 year. Let's not put him in the Hall of Fame just yet. There's not a planet where look, if I did my top 5 cornerback rankings off the top of my head right now, I'd have Ramsey as the best corner in football still. I don't give a shit that people said he took a step back. I've watched that guy for years, and I actually think he's going to have one of his better seasons. Surtain Jr., Jari Alexander, Sauce Gardner, and Marlon Humphrey. Those are my 5 top corners.
Well, Ramsey, you could make the argument, Neil, that he's the best defensive back, not just corner, right?
Absolutely, man. And that's where it's big market teams get the benefit of the doubt. Look, there's people in the media that love the Dolphins, but there's a lot of people in the media that don't love the Dolphins for whatever reason, right? I don't get it, but man, good. You know what? If you're Xavier Howard, right, you're going to go out there and I think X is going to take this shit personal. I really do. And not just the Madden stuff, but everything else that he's seen. People forget just how good X was at his prime. Man, I don't want to be too bold. Do you think at his peak when he was the number 3 in the MVP voting? Because I know that Diggs had that season with 10 interceptions, but Diggs got burnt a lot. X did not.
Yeah, he's better than Diggs. Was
that the best quarterback season we saw since Darrelle Revis retired?
Yeah.
X. Yeah, right. I think that people are probably going to try to challenge X because they think he's down, and I think the turnovers are going to come back up.
But you know what they're also forgetting, Neil? Because I know you know the contracts like the back of your hand because you look at them all the time. Isn't he had a guaranteed money after this year?
Well, you can get $19 million in savings as a post-June cut designation.
So he's playing for the bag again too. That's what people seem to be forgetting, Neil. He's motivated not just by the disrespect, but also he's got to get more of a bag, right? And don't think he ain't watching them add Cam Smith and saying, okay, let's make this a hard decision for them. You know what I mean? That's exactly what he's going to do.
I think there's a lot of X slander. I think there's a lot of Jalen Waddle slander, and I think there's a lot of Tua slander. And, look, I saw those lists from Jeremy Fowler of the top 10 positions,
Yeah.
and they're from executive and coaches, and they were lower than I am on Tua, right? But they named 15 quarterbacks, and Tua was one of them, right?
Yeah.
No matter how you slice it, if you don't have Tua Tagovailoa in your top 15 quarterbacks of football, you are on a personal vendetta against a person or player. Like,
Yeah.
that is just the way it is at this point. And I see a lot of the Jalen Waddle disrespect, man. Like, Jalen
Yeah.
Waddle being the 18th ranked wide receiver in that game. Like, I'm looking at it. I'm like, look, and I love Amari Cooper. I wanted him here. Amari Cooper, man, I don't even know if peak Amari Cooper is as good as Jalen Waddle.
And he
Like,
was 15th. If you count the honorable mentions in order, he was 15th on that ESPN list voted by coaches, executives, and scouts, bro. The disrespect.
well, that's why I'll go to this, man. This is why I have a feeling this season is going to just be so special, because the attitude of this team is different, man. They fight back, man. When people punch this team, they fight back. They're not the team that, you push it and they roll over. We saw so many of those soft Dolphin teams here, man, for so many years. Like, this team fights back and they have a cohesiveness, right? Like Tyreek and Tua and Waddle, but they have that on the defensive side of the ball. I saw Raekwon Davis baking something with Bradley Chubb today as a video. Like, these guys work together, man. And like, when you're in those football locker rooms, Reason, you played the game. You've been in those locker rooms when people are doubting you, they're putting shit in the paper about you. You sit there in your rooms, you look at your teammates in the eyes, and it's like, you know how we shut these people up? We go out there and we hit somebody. We let them know who we are. And then when you do that, like, it's the whole Mike Tyson thing, man. Everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the face. Everything that anyone says about anyone right now, it's just talk. When that first game comes, that first week of September, and Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb are doing pyramid dances behind Justin Herbert after they sacked him for the 5th time in that game, like, all that stuff about how great Herbert is, all the limitations, like, that's when all this talk goes away. And this team's gonna carry a chip, because Mike McDaniel is a unique motivator where he's gonna take those little chips, like, how we saw him joking about like Georgia and Alabama when he was talking to Tua. He takes those little shots that motivate people, and that this team doesn't need motivation, but there's a lot of people want to give it to them. And that's what I even think makes this Dolphin team even more dangerous, is they're going to respond to these critics. They're going to play with a swagger, right? Like when Tua threw that deep ball last year and he's like, oh, I can't throw the deep ball. And when he did that, like, this team will talk back and then they'll go and back it up. So, like, all these headlines that we see, all this stuff, man, thank God real football's back. And we don't have to hear these kind of false,
Well, let's talk about
clickbait titles.
Let's talk about one of these, okay? And let's talk about them fighting back and basically someone from another franchise giving you chalkboard material. Julian Edelman, he was on, Jason Kelsey and Travis Kelsey's podcast, and he basically said the Dolphins take a step back in 2023, and I quote, I could see Miami taking a step back. I don't know if it was a fluke, but December, November, football is different. It's different. I see them taking a step back because they have so much hype around them. There's like always that one team where they're supposed to be good, and something like, 40% of the teams that made the playoffs last year aren't going to make the playoffs this year. Now, I mean, brother, this guy's talking trash when Tua's under center. Bill Belichick and the Patriots haven't figured out a way to beat the Dolphins with Tua under center, and this guy's talking about us regressing. Right. Okay, well, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, Bleacher Report, and I went over this on the channel a couple of days ago, they came out with an article talking about the most overhyped and underrated teams heading into this regular season, and they actually labeled us as overhyped as well. And you feel like that's where Julian Edelman's going with this, that we're a little overhyped. I mean, I don't get it, Neil. Why wouldn't you just keep your mouth shut? Because now you think our players aren't going to hear that? You think, I mean, and let's be honest with you. If this guy didn't play with the GOAT, would we even be talking about Julian Edelman's opinion?
No. And honestly, man, like, again, that's like all these, like, so many players or ex-players now are in that world, and they all have platforms, and, they have a lot of followers and people, and they can say something that gets a lot of steam. But at the end of the day, man, like, I don't expect a Patriots player to go on there and rave about the Dolphins. Like, at the end of the day, like, the Dolphins are hated within that division for good reason. And there's going to be people that love them and don't. I'll say there's just as many people that are there for the Dolphins that are against them. You're all over the place. The proof's going to be in the pudding. And, I know this for sure. The Patriots don't worry me. They're talking about firing the greatest head coach maybe in the history of football. So like you talk about, and you're paying Gesicki and Devontae Parker to be the weapons that you don't have. Like I just Julian Edelman, I always like to see that underdog player, who kind of, was a quarterback at Kent State, gets in there and has a hell of a career, makes good money. But I don't know why take shots at the Dolphins when, kind of water your own lawn. The Patriots are an embarrassment right now. We all know that we could get on any of these shows with Jets fans and Bills fans. We'll fight with each other. But I think all the fan bases agree, and even the ones that are Patriots fans that are smart know they're the fourth best team in this division, and that's being nice. Like, there are no one. They could go 1-5 in this division, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. But that's why I'm really excited about this team, because I don't act like I'm an expert for the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? Because I don't. I watch Trevor Lawrence when he's on TV. We break down the Dolphins. Like, there's nothing that happens that the Dolphins do on the field or off the field that we don't talk about, right? Or we don't look about deeper.
Mm-hmm.
I know this football team. I know when we go into a season and we have no shot with John Beck as our starting quarterback. I know when we have Gus Frerotte as our starting quarterback. I know when we transition from Dan Marino to a guy named Damon Heward who didn't make it, and then it was Jay Feeler, that we had no shot. I know that this team has a shot. And that's the difference, is that your own team better than everyone else. And sure, like I make no punches about it. Like, I'm optimistic, and there's a part of me that's a homer, and people will say that about me, and that's fine. But I've never, ever in the history of me watching and covering football predicted the Miami Dolphins to be in a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl. And a little spoiler alert, that's a prediction that I'm willing to make this year.
Over 300 of you in the chat. Please smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. Let's get into some of our training camp predictions here. Neal, as usual, your boy had a nice little image made up for us here. So we'll go back and forth. We'll trade off. We made 5 predictions each. We'll start off with your 5th over here. Cedric Wilson Jr. is either traded or released, Neal. That's your 5th prediction.
Yeah, his skill set, right, is duplicated all over this offense. He's not going to beat out Robbie Chosen. He's not going to beat out Braxton Berrios. So he's at best the number 5. I believe that Eazy-E is going to be the guy, because he's going to be that red zone type of threat. And I know what I've heard about him, what you've heard about him. And then, honestly, depending on the position battles, the Dolphins might be okay just keeping 5 receivers. And if they keep 6, I think it could be River Craycraft over Cedric Wilson.
Agree.
So
I agree.
I think, we saw Denzel Mims get traded for a pick. Denzel doesn't have the bloated contract that Cedric Wilson has.
He also doesn't have the resume.
Yeah, with that said, he doesn't have the resume. If, a team loses a receiver, if Odell Beckham goes down in Baltimore, which happens every year, if Dallas isn't comfortable with some of the new weapons that they've added there, right? If you say, what, we can stomach the cap for a year, you can get out of him next year. You can save $7 million straight up by cutting Cedric Wilson next year if you acquire him. So you're just taking him on a flyer for this year, and he's going to be your number 3 receiver, maybe a number 2 for you. I just don't see him being good enough at this point to make this Dolphins football team. I think they're just too talented at receiver. And I know Trent Sherfield was a bright spot on the team last year, played really well, but I think at best Trent Sherfield's the number 5 receiver on this team this year.
And he'd be over Cedric. Yeah.
Right. So I just don't think Cedric has a way of making this team. And, while we're on it, another guy that I think has a long shot to make the team is going to be Keon Carlson. I just think with that cap number, he's a guy that, I like that cornerback room. We just talked about all these cornerbacks and safeties and depths. We didn't mention 2 guys' names.
He needs to be deemed invaluable to the special teams for that's his key. That's his path to making the roster, bro.
Right. Yeah. I think it's, we didn't talk about him, and we didn't talk about Noah. Like, when you name 15 players in your secondary and you don't even name those 2 guys, there's a reason.
Yeah. I didn't name yesterday because yesterday with the boys on the finish line, we did the top burning questions heading into camp, and one of mine was, is the Noah Benogany project over? You know what I mean?
Was the answer yes?
Well, for me, it was, because you got Bryce Thompson coming up.
Right.
Bryce Thompson might even make this roster, or the way he's looking, right? They might keep him on the cheap as
Good
the
ball
sixth
skills.
guy. You know what I
Right.
mean? Right. So for me, number 5, kind of the opposite of that, but hey, it's kind of the same with 2. Active on the free agent market, except that would have been the negative. That would have been sending a guy to free agency. I'm still shocked that we are on July 20th and we have not added interior defensive line or interior linebacker help, or even another tight end, because that room is weak as hell right now. Do they believe it? Did they see enough from Brandon Pilley and Shorts to deem him, or do they have? I've heard quietly they are super high on Josiah Bronson. Are they? Is that something they're waiting to see develop? I don't know. You know what I mean? An interior linebacker. I mean, you've moved Andrew Van Ginkel from the edge to the interior, and he seems like the best shot to make number 3, because Duke Riley's a special team specialist, and we don't know how advanced Channing Tindall is going to be in this defense, after admitting last year it was really hard to grip that playbook, and now we've switched defenses. So I think eventually, not only injuries, I mean, there's a roster spots opened up with Zeke Vandenberg going to be out for the whole year. They're going to be forced to be active on the free agent market, and whether this, counts for Dalvin Cook, Akeem Hicks, Quan Alexander, Anthony Barr, whatever the case may be, I think they're going to be forced to be active on the free agent market, and thus the Dolphins will be active on the free agent market during training camp.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm with you. I agree with you. I think, whether, we all are waiting to see what happens with Dalvin, but I think the Dolphins are going to bolster that. Like, you're right. Brandon Pilley, he's going to be, to me, a practice squad type player that needs a year of NFL conditioning and strength training to get to, first of all, he needs to get his play and endurance up, right? Like he struggled with that when he was at Southern Cal. He got tired pretty easy. He's got to get, he's got to get that NFL regimen and get himself getting there. And, I don't know a lot about Josiah Bronson. I'll be honest. I watched a little bit of him when he was coming out of the draft. But I do think they'll be looking. I got that coming up, so I'll dig into that one more when it comes up for me.
So for the 4th prediction, me and you both have a player. Each picked a player. I picked Mitchell Agudier earning a roster spot, and that's based off how impressive he has been through OTAs. And I know that's another position we're loaded at, but it seems like, he's already past Cameron Good. If Mitchell Agudier continues, and especially with them transitioning Van Ginkel off the edge into the interior, essentially something does open up there. And then you got Aubrey Miller Jr. earning a roster spot, and I'm guessing, Neil, that's based off how weak the interior is right now.
Yeah, and I just think, like, I had kind of an epiphany. Does Duke Riley definitely make this football team? Like, I don't know.
I think he does, because they love him on special teams.
Yeah, they like him especially, but Channing Tindall, does he definitely make this football team? Ginkel's on a 1-year deal. It's going to be David Long and Jerome Baker are going to be your starting linebackers. I just think we miss that physical presence in the middle, the guy with the size that can lay the lumber. And Landon Roberts definitely had his shortcomings in pass coverage, but there is no question, around the box, nose to the football, he could deliver a blow, right? And I think Aubrey Miller is that type of guy, that he's going to be that guy in the 3rd and 4th quarter when you're watching these preseason games, and they're the other team's trying to get a look at whatever running back they're going to try to see. I think Aubrey Miller is going to be meeting them in the hole and letting them know. And I think he's going to be a hard time, because when I talked about, like, poaching off the practice squad, I think he's the type of player, if he's that close to making your team and you put him on the practice squad, somebody's going to come after him.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 110%. I mean, obviously people know what the deal is. He was Nick Bolton is the one who basically, and everyone knows how much I love Nick Bolton coming out of that class. He's basically the one that pushed him out. And then, this Aubrey Miller went on with Jackson State and was, we're talking about an All-American. SWAC Defensive Player of the Year, first team all SWAC. He had what do you
Well
have? Like
coached.
he had 117 tackles last year.
Yep.
And he had 8.5 tackles over the last 2 years, 10 over the last 3. Forces fumbles because he lays the lumber, and he's better in coverage than people give him credit for too. Everyone knows I was a huge Aubrey Miller guy when we brought him in as a UDFA. And I'm right there with you. I think there's a path to him making this team. And I definitely, between him and Mitchell Agudier, I definitely picked the guy with the harder path. You know what I mean? Number 3 for you, Dolphins add a veteran DT, and we kind of just touched on this. Akeem Hicks is out there, Neal, and a guy I keep mentioning to people privately that people are sleeping on, Neal, and I think he could come for real cheap. Michael Brockers, bro. Remember a couple of years ago under Staley, he had his best year as a Ram under Staley in this defense. Neal.
Yeah, I have 3 names written down: Akeem Hicks, Michael Brockers, and Shelby Harris. Those are the 3 names I have written down here. Shelby Harris played under Vic Fangio before. All 3 of those guys would be great fits to add veteran depth to the defensive line. You're probably getting them for $3 million or less, any of them. The only one who's really made big boatloads of money was Michael Brockers. If you remember, he was a free agent coming. I think he originally had agreed to join the Ravens and then had a change of heart. And I think he went back to the Rams for pretty big money. But like any of those 3 guys, I mean, they're all really good against the run. And they're all mostly 2-down players. But that's all we really need in this defense. Of the 3, the guy that I would like to take, if I had my choice, would be Akeem Hicks, because I just think his ceiling, what I've seen on the field, is the highest of those 3.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think you could go wrong with any of those 3 players. They're all guys that are very good number 2s. Honestly, they're all probably an upgrade to John Jenkins.
I agree. Yeah.
I think they're all an upgrade to him from last year. So I want they're going to get a defensive tackle. I don't know when, but it's going to come soon. I think they have to do that. That's when Vic Fangio is saying it. I think it's linebacker and defensive tackle. We heard before the draft that they were interested in defensive tackle. They didn't really do a lot to add to it during the draft because I just don't think the players they wanted were on the board. They're going to add a veteran. And you know what? On a young team like the Dolphins have, adding a good veteran that could be another nice voice in the locker room is a smart move.
Yeah, I agree. Number 3 for me should be no secret to anyone because, we talked about it when we did our position battles, and I've talked about it multiple times. Skylar Thompson, I think, is going to outperform Mike White. Now, whether he wins the job or not, that's going to come down to politics as usual. But I think Skylar Thompson outperforms Mike White. What we've seen so far and what we've heard about, Mike White has not been impressive. The arm has looked lackluster, and this is going to bug people because that's money that could have been allocated elsewhere. And also, Skylar Thompson was drafted to be this guy, to be the QB2. Did they jump the gun by not believing in their own process? We'll find out. But I continue to say Skylar Thompson's going to win. I said last season, right? Last offseason, I said year 1, make the 53, year 2, win the quarterback 2 spot, and I'm keeping true to the path that I saw laid out ahead of Skylar Thompson. So I think Skylar Thompson outperforms Mike White, Neal, and I think he wins the
Reason,
quarterback
you're
2
right.
spot.
And it might on the depth chart they might have Mike White ahead of him, but I think the Dolphins internally believe Skylar Thompson's the true backup of this team. And we talked about this last week, but I think that Mike White is a signing that we regret, meaning we could have, like you just said, we could have allocated the money. I think if the Dolphins were in the position to do it again, they probably wouldn't have signed him. Because
He was like Cedric Wilson all over again, Neal.
Yeah, I think if something significant happened to Tua, like I said, they'd look at it like a Matt Stafford.
Yeah.
They might even say, "Hey, Arizona, you're well on your way to getting Caleb Williams. Can we get Kyler Murray?" Like, I'm just throwing out hypotheticals, but I don't think they would turn the keys to Mike White in a long-term scenario, and they might even surprise you in a short-term scenario and give the keys to Skyler. I think the Dolphins have something. Skyler is a long-term backup here. We on the show, I've criticized him for his play on the football field, but recognizing that he was a 7th-round rookie forced into action, Skylar Thompson deserves a lot of the credit for getting us into the playoffs in that game. It wasn't pretty. All we needed to do was get a win against the Jets, and he got the job done. And then he went into Buffalo in a playoff game on the road as a rookie 7th rounder. And, dude, he showed marbles. And to me, that's how you're going to win me over is play fearless football like that. I think Skylar Thompson's here and plays all 4 years of his rookie deal. And whether we sign him after that will be interesting. I can't predict 4 years in the future, but I think the Dolphins have found a guy they think is a reliable backup now and for the long haul.
Yeah. And then number 2, we both have the same thing. Isaiah Wynn.
Right.
Winning the left guard spot. I think we both see this, Neil. I think we both feel that Liam Eichenberg, they might have found the better fit for him at center, and being the swing center and the swing guard might be better for Liam Eichenberg's development because it's not rushing him into anything and it's allowing him to develop his body, strengthen his anchor, et cetera, et cetera. But we both had faith when we signed Isaiah Wynn. We both said that man's going for that left guard spot, and we had people in the media, Neil, oh, he's a left tackle. You saw people in the media gatekeeping Wynn as a left tackle, on Twitter and such. And then as the reports have come out, he's been strictly left guard. Neil, I mean, what else is there to say? We both haven't been impressed from what we've seen from Eichenberg, and we both have faith that this is a position Isaiah Wynn excelled at before he came to the NFL, and before Georgia moved him to left tackle. He excelled as a left guard. This is something me and you both believe he can do. It's even something Dante Scarnecchia predicted last year on a podcast after he had left New England, and they asked him, is Isaiah Wynn salvageable? And he said, yes, he just needs a change of environment. And between Frank Smith and Mike McDaniel and such, Neil, I think we got the right minds in place. And you know what? I say that with a lot of confidence. You know why, Neil? Because they did something that was so obviously needed and was so obviously the right move. They moved him to left guard where he has a chance to excel, Neil.
Yeah, I think when we look back to the season, Robbie Chosen and Isaiah Wynn are going to be 2 shrewd moves that Chris Greer made that are going to pay huge dividends. I think those 2 moves are big. When he came out, Quentin Nelson was my number 1 interior offensive lineman. My number 2 was Will Hernandez, who played for the Giants and the Cardinals. He was out of UTEP, and number 3 for me is Isaiah Wynn. Just because one franchise played him in an offensive tackle doesn't mean that's right. We've seen stubbornness in any franchise before. I think his best position always has been left guard. I think you'll see really good veteran communication between him and Terron Armstead on that left side. And it leads me to this question, Reason. Do you see a scenario? Because I think Eichenberg is going to be in the battle for center.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think if he does not report to camp next week, there could be a scenario where Connor Williams isn't on this roster for the start of the season? I know that's pretty heavy. It's a pretty big leap.
I don't think he's going to leave that money on the table.
No? Okay.
Let me ask you this. Knight just donated. Does Liam make the team with Feeney and Jones?
Yeah, here's what, if I had to pick right now, and we got to see the train camp. From left to right, it's going to be Armstead, Wynn, in the middle is going to be Connor, Robert Hunt, and Austin. They're your starters. I think Feeney's going to definitely make the team as an interior guy. I like Robert Jones, but I think Eichenberg's going to stick. I don't think they're just going to outright cut Eichenberg. There's 7. They'll carry 9, right?
Right. Robert Jones, I think, will make it.
I think Robert Jones would be there. And if you're looking at the 9th, if they do carry 9, and I'm not a big fan of him, but he's a veteran, I think it's Cedric Ogbuie. I think he's going to beat out Kendall Lamb. I just think that veteran guy who's got all those NFL starts under his belt, that's going to be appealing to this front office. You've seen franchises salvage their offensive line by throwing just a bunch of veterans out of there and plugging and playing and trying to find the best scenario for it. I think Ogbuie, even though I get nervous when he's out there, I'm not going to lie, but I think his veteran and experience and just the number of starts and snaps he's played, I think that's your 9 offensive linemen. And honestly, you got a lot of you got Terron, who's obviously the class, and you got Hunt and Connor. But I honestly think that you could build an adequate offensive line with those other pieces. Sure, we all saw that Zach Martin's unhappy, and I'd let you with a chainsaw cut off my finger right here on this show if I knew Zach Martin was going to be a Dolphin. But That's not going to happen. Let's be real. Like, that's just not going to happen. Dallas will figure a way to keep him. I don't hate the Dolphins' offensive line when I think of it in totality as much as I thought I would. I really don't. I don't love it. I'm not going to sit here and, sunshine and rainbow you with it. But if we get Terran Armstead for 75% of the regular season and the full postseason, I'm great.
Yeah. All right. And then our number one, I'm going to start with me and then I'll finish with you because we'll segue into our final topic off of yours first prediction after you give us your description of it. But for me, number one, the defense gels quickly. Why is this number one? Because it was something that Ballgame talked about, but it's also something I believe is going to happen with the blend of veterans we have involved here and also the experienced veterans like Ramsey who have already played in the system. I think this defense is going to gel very quickly during training camp, very quickly during the preseason, and I think out the gate we are going to see the makeup of a top 10 defense. I don't think this is a defense that's going to take weeks into the regular season to gel. We always talk about it every year. What's the MO for every team's training camp? The defense is always ahead of the offense. And why this matters so much and why this is number one, because if the defense does gel quickly, like I predict, and we have an offense that's with a bunch of players heading into the second year of that offense should pick up right where they left off, i.e. a top 10 scoring offense. And if we come out of the gate with a top 10 defense, oh boy, Neil, the NFL better look out and they will be on notice over those first 6-8 weeks. So the defense, I think it's going to gel quickly. I think it's too talented and it's got too great of a mind leading it for it not to. I mean, you even heard Jerome Baker's first year in this defense, and even he was talking about how much he likes this defense. And when he was asking Fangio about certain fits and responsibilities, he was told, man, in certain times, you're just going to have to play football.
Right.
So, this is a defense that allows these guys just to play football, not overthink about what they have to do, because when you start overthinking is when mistakes happen. This is reactionary football, and I think a lot of these guys are built for this defense, and I think it's going to gel very quickly, Neil.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this defense has the makings to be just special. When not a lot of teams have an elite secondary and an elite pass rush. And why that matters in football terms is, right, like a lot of times when you have a good secondary, it helps your pass rush because the quarterback holds on to the ball longer. The pass rushers have a chance to get home quicker, right? I would argue that the combo of Phillips and Chubb is almost as good as the combo of Ramsey and Xavier Howard. And that's why I think this defense is just so special. I think the secondary is going to make quarterbacks hold the ball longer because you also have a ball hawk in Giovanni Holland in the middle of the field. Like, quarterbacks are going to be confused. We have a defensive coordinator who is, if not the best, among the best over the last decade. And then you have a defensive front that just plays so well together. I'm with you. I think this defense is going to be special. My number one is Devin Achane is the biggest star of camp. And what I mean by that is that when we are hearing these training camp reports and everyone's covering them and they're coming out, the consensus is going to be, wow, the Dolphins just hit a home run. And, you loved him in the draft process. He was my 36th overall player. We drafted him right around 90. It was my biggest variance in the positive of any draft selection that was made on draft, the entire draft. Devin Achane, I think, is just going to seamlessly become a playmaker. I think I'm not even going to label him as a running back in year one because I think he'll run. I think he'll catch. I think he'll be great on special teams. I think in year one, you're going to see a little bit of Darren Sproles, and I'm not saying that's his ceiling. I think that's his floor. I think with ample opportunity, he's more like a Chris Johnson, but I think you're going to see a player that has packages that are carved out for him to get the football. I think he's going to make the most of his carries, and I just think that this guy – I said this on this show a couple weeks ago. I think in a year or two, or not this year, but the following year or the year after that, he's a guy in the fantasy football drafts when you're sitting with your buddies at the end of the first round and that guy has pick 12, has 12 and 13, and he's got to swing it back to him. He's a guy that, he's going to get picked there. I think he's that type of player I think he's going to be one of the most dynamic running backs we've had here in a long time.
Probably since Reggie.
Yeah, and I think honestly, like, as much as I loved Ronnie Brown and I think Reggie Bush was phenomenal when he was here. Phenomenal. He had a phenomenal year in the Dolphins. I think that's the type of player that we'll see from Achane early on. I think he's that good.
Very special.
Home run type of pick.
Yeah, I I originally had him at number 1 right here with the, beating out the veterans, because I believe even if you add Dalvin Cook at worst by midseason, I think Devin Achane is running back 2. If you don't add Dalvin Cook, I think Devin Achane's got a realistic chance to take over this room by the end of the season. I just think this kid's special. Everyone knows how long I've been talking about this kid. You're talking about a football player that's an Olympic level athlete, not an Olympic level athlete trying to be a football player. You got a really, really good player, in Devin Achane, and I can't wait, man. I cannot wait to hear him blazing it up when those pads come on. And I've said it. I believe in year 1, I've said this multiple times. I believe in year 1, he's going to establish himself as one of, if not the best, pass catching running backs in the NFL. I truly believe that, man. So over 340 of you in the room, guys, please smash the like button. Final question here before we get into final thoughts, Neal, based off, Devin Achane. You heard in that article from Joe Shad where Tua talked about how we were legit contenders. He also said this about Achane. He said Achane has been very impressive throughout the first OTAs that we've had. I think when you look at the practices that we've had, I mean, he's shown some pretty cool bursts of speed, his hands, understanding the plays. He's done a really good job with that. Neal, is it safe to say, that he is a dark horse for Rookie of the Year in the AFC?
He's a dark horse. The reason I won't put him that I don't think he really has. I think the Dolphins are going to add Dalvin Cook, which is going to take a lot of carries for him. And
yeah.
Look, we're going to have 3 rookie quarterbacks at least, starting with Stroud, Richardson, Bryce Young. The league loves quarterbacks; they gravitate to them. And then look, Bijan's going to be a beast in Atlanta, and I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to do well in Detroit. Right? Like I love all of these players. But I think the story is that I think Devin Achane can hold his own with those guys. And I think that's the big story. You got to remember, like, Bijan Robinson was a top 10 pick. Jahmyr Gibbs went way higher than anybody ever could have imagined, right?
Yeah.
Like, we got this dude in round 3. And, like, that's where, like, the thing I think that's going to be cool about Devin Achane is that, we have dogs on this team. Like, when Devin breaks a big run, you don't think players like Waddle and Tyreek are going to take this dude under their wing. He's going to become part of that clique. They're going to make big plays. They're going to feed off each other's excitement and enthusiasm. Like, that's what I see here happening. I see this team, like, we see the speed the Dolphins have, and everyone's to talk about how they're a track team and all that stuff, and that's great. But I hate when they say it in that terms, because Tyreek Hill's fast as hell, but he's also a great football player. Jalen Waddle's fast as hell. He's a great football player. Raheem Mostert's a good football player. He's fast as hell. Chosen Anderson's a good football player. He's fast as hell. Devin Achane's a good football player who's fast as hell. Like you said earlier, these aren't just track guys that have speed. We've seen those guys, the Darius Haywards, Bays of the world, just come in, run a fast 40, and flame out and never become anything.
Yeah.
Devin Achane is going to have it, and because who's our head coach? It's Mike McDaniel, the mad scientist. You don't think that Mike McDaniel spent 3 days locked in a retreat, probably in the room next to Aaron Rodgers, drawing up plays for freaking Devin Achane? That's what
hitting on the hookah and drawing up plays, Neal.
Yeah, man, good for him. I don't care what he's hitting as long as he can draw up plays. Like, but I think when we see these training camp reports, you're going to hear the holy crap. Did the Dolphins find this diamond? And that's why, like, I say the clock's ticking on Dalvin. And here's why. Because I know the Dolphins have an offer. We know that. We know that the running back market's getting crowded with Saquon and Jacobs hanging out. If Dalvin doesn't make a move soon, Devin Achane is going to close that door for him. That's what I truly believe. So If we
You're
could,
basically saying he can't wait deep into our training camp because that's going to give Devin Achane more time to establish himself and more opportunities
right.
to pull away from the veterans, which I actually agree with. That's why, if I wasn't going to ask you this question about the rookie of the year, Devin Achane was going to be my number one guy, just like you too, on my list, because I think he's going to, Raheem Mostert's impressive, but can you count on him in the December, January months? You know what I mean? And then beyond that, Jeff Wilson, we like him in the mix there, but do we really think Gaskin and Achane are going to give Devon Achane a run for his money? I don't think so. I think the best chance for anyone to give Devon Achane a run for their money in the room right now is Raheem Mostert because of that speed he has. If Mostert is more healthy than, which I've heard he is, more healthy than he was heading into last offseason coming off that injury, because what was clear was Mostert last year was missing that second level gear. He was missing that gear when he hit the second level and would finish the run. That wasn't there yet last year, and I attribute it to that because he was never fully recovered from that injury. He probably came into the season 80%, and then the wear and tear of the season knocks you down even further,
Oh, right. That was, late in the season like that. He was all banged up.
Yeah.
I think, I posted today, Dalvin Cook makes 2 in the Miami Dolphins offense so much better. I agree 100%. I'm not desperate, though, man. I'm being honest because – I believe in Devin Achane, and I'll go to this every single time, man. You don't have to always pay what somebody wants to get them there. If you run a business the right way, people will come to your business, your organization, because of other things than money. They'll come for culture. They'll come because leaders believe in them. They'll come because they get to do what they love every day. There's all of these various reasons, right? Yeah. And you win. This culture says, you are lucky to be chosen to be a part of this, right? Yeah. I don't care if every article I see, it's the Patriots, Jets, Dolphins, or Dalvin Cook. Whenever I see something like that, it makes it a no-brainer to me because I put everything in the blender, and who's going to give me the best smoothie? It's going to be the Miami Dolphins, where everything lines up for you. So Dalvin is trying to be a businessman right now, and his agent's helping him do that. But I'm telling you, there's something here with Devin Achane, and I know you agree with me, and I'm telling our audience this. If he waits to mid-training camp, Devin Achane is the type of guy that's going to – he ain't going to sleep on that opportunity. Yeah. He's the type of dude that's going to say, now this is my chance to go prove that I'm the guy.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. We're going to be back next week. And when we're back next week, Neil, they will be at training camp. So, next week's a big week. It all begins. And when we come back next week, we will be 2 days into the veterans reporting, and we'll be 3 days away from fans going to camp. So we hope to see y'all next week. Get excited, strap it in, check your pulse, buckle up. It's time to go, baby. So we'll see y'all in the next one. As always, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day. Over 350 of you in the room. Please smash that like button. We appreciate all y'all for coming through, and we will be sure to see y'all back here next week when we dive fin too deep. Until then, take it easy, everyone. We'll see y'all next week.